Greetings, I'm Sami Laakso from Snowdale Design, and in this stream we are going to go through the design diary for Peacemakers Horrors of War. We have a blog post on Board Game Geek, and we are going to go through that, as well as plenty of different prototypes from different time periods. I have quite a pile here that we can go through and look at them. The ones for Dawn of Peacemakers more briefly, I'd assume, and a little bit more time on the Horrors of War side of things, but that should be interesting, taking a look of various prototypes we have. And of course I should turn down the music a little. Welcome to the stream, Kevin. Asking already a good question. We can sure start with your question. Let's put it on the screen. And is there any part of the game design, game making process, the math, publishing, art, etc., that you didn't feel like you could do, and how did you overcome that? Maybe the question in short, what was the hardest part of the design process? Yeah. So that's paraphrasing your question. What I would say that was the hardest part for making. I'll answer for Peacemakers Horrors of War. We were stumped on, I'd say, few times, but I didn't think that we could not find a good solution. But there were definitely some parts where we were stumped for a little while, thinking of different solutions before coming up with one that we are really happy. And one of those is definitely the horror cards, as we knew that one of the main criticism people had for Dawn of Peacemakers was that it was okay and sometimes even encouraged to let various arm units get defeated, to let them die basically. And we knew that we had to do something to remedy that, something to change. And that's also like the subtitle of the new one is Horrors of War. And once we did figure out how to make that with the priority system, when you draw it and you put them on top of deck when units get defeated, and all the different parts that make the horrors work as well as they do, that was one of the really hard ones we had to tackle with this one. As we look at, we'll get to look at that more in there when we take a look at the design diary, but we had a questionnaire and we sought feedback from multiple different avenues for this one in order to make it as good as a remake or re-implementation of the core system as we could. And the horrors and the theme was one of the main ones that was, we knew that we had to do something, but we weren't quite sure how and what, and we should address that. Welcome to the stream, Coglisto. Let's put what games inspired us. I assume again for Peacemakers Horrors of War. Well, the main obvious inspiration was Dawn of Peacemakers, the previous implementation of the system, and that was released roughly 5 years ago. And we had with not constant but regular requests from people, both distributors and retailers and of course, players who wanted Dawn of Peacemakers, but it was out of print. And we did not want to release it as is because we had learned more new things. So we knew that we could make the game better for everyone with the new version. So basically, Dawn of Peacemakers is the game that inspired us to make Peacemakers or Horrors of War. And there's no what other games inspired us in this. Well, just in general, fun cooperative games where you work together to solve a puzzle or play work against the game or try to win the game together, essentially, instead of trying to outmaneuver your other players. But it's a rare game because I can say multiple inspiration sources for Dale of Merchants and Lands of Galsur, but as for Peacemakers Horrors of War, it's such a unique and different game that there's not much inspiration, like individual inspirations, like for this mechanism or that, but it's mostly just like playing a lot of games, wanting to make something really different and unique, wanting to bring the peacemaking theme to life, and that's like what inspired us to make the remake. Then we can start by I have a lot of old prototypes as I showed you. We can go through those, and I also have the design diary open, and we can go through that and maybe show relevant prototype components as we go through that, instead of going just first for the diary and then for the prototypes. We can try to intertwine those together, and at any point if you have questions, just feel free to drop them in the comments, and I will answer them during the stream as well, especially if you have anything regards the design process. Those are excellent questions to ask now. We can start with the origin of Peacemakers, and for that we can open here the design diary, and you can find it on BoardGameGeek right now. There's a link down in the description for the post. It's under Peacemakers Horrors of War, forums and news subcategory. I'm not going to read it line by line. You can do that yourself, but I will paraphrase and try to give extra insight on various parts as we go through. Welcome to the stream, Michael Michelle Storvogel. I'm not best with foreign names, but Michelle. What games do you like to play when not designing your own? I'll go through the origin of Peacemakers, like this first part here, and then we can get to your questions, so I don't need to change the subtitle here too frequently, and I can try to add timestamps after for those who look at this after the fact. As I already said previously, the story for Peacemakers Horrors of War begins in 2015, or well, I said 18 because that's actually the year Dawn of Peacemakers was released was 2018, but the development process for this started already in 2015, and that's like when the original first idea for this game came. And it was my idea, and it was a really simple idea. What would it mean if we wanted to make a game about peace? Like, what kind of game would that be? Would you be negotiating on a table, like with different people from different countries, or what would it mean? And I did not want to go that route. That could be a game in itself, definitely. But I was intrigued by the idea that there would be this ongoing war on the game board, and your job as a peacemaker would be to try to stop the war on the battlefield. Like, that would be something that intrigued me a lot, that there would be these forces fighting against each other, and you would like want to push them aside and stop that war from happening while it is going on. And that was the origin, what was the initial idea for the game. And let's see, I don't have open here right now, but I can open. I can find a picture of the original, because this one is the new Horrors of War, but I can open from BGG, find a good picture of the original. Maybe that one is good. Here's a picture of the original, or like the map, where there were miniatures and they were fighting each other, and the goal was to stop that. But it was a board made of hexes and like normal board, and you have to build the scenarios using these hex tiles, and then you put miniatures with their bases. Here's another look at that. So that's the origin, and how it came to be. It's just from the idea of wanting to make a game where your goal is not to fight, your goal is not to kill anyone, your goal is to stop a war between warring factions who are entangled in a conflict. And let's check out the questions. So I had Michelle's question. What games do you like to play when not designing? Let's see if it's not too long a question for my box. Yes, it's good. Let's resize again. Yes. So Michelle asked which games I like to play when I'm not designing myself, new games, and well, the answer is quite straightforward, like almost anything. For me, board games are mostly about sharing the space and having good time with my friends, and just playing and hanging around is like a reason to gather together, instead of doing something like it. For adults, it's sometimes hard to justify going to someone's home and spending time together, so it's good excuse, like, oh, let's not hang around, let's just play board games, and maybe we hang around afterwards, so something like that. So for me, it's the social interactions between players, not as much the game itself. But that being said, if I can choose the game myself, I tend to like hybrids, so like thematic games with solid mechanisms. For like both of the ends of the spectrum, like I tend to kind of dislike dry Euros where you're just focusing on your own stuff and not interacting with other players too much, like multiplayer solitaires. Like, there's sometimes I can of course find enjoyment out of that, but it lacks the interaction. Like, why I'm playing this with other people when it would be the same as they would not exist here. So I like when the games have interaction. But if we go too far to the other side of the spectrum, like Ameritrash, which is just roll a bucket of dice, then that's also not quite for me. As said previously, I can still enjoy those because of the company, but if I can choose the game myself, I like something in between, like solid mechanisms, interaction, mechanisms which make sense thematically. Like my game group tend to all make jokes out of when I complain about a mechanism in a game that doesn't make thematic sense. Like, oh, here Sami goes again on his tangent, like, oh, this makes no sense at all. Because for me, it makes it so much easier to learn the game when the mechanism makes sense thematically and retain the information as well. Like, oh, I didn't remember that because it makes no sense. Specific games, that was about categories, like some of my favorite games include Cosmic Encounter, Root, Seventh Continent, for example. Those are all really nice in their own ways. Have some different problems with them, but I still like them quite a lot. And then welcome to the stream, Mike Rosowski. Was there anything you had to remove from the final product and was sad to see it go? Let's see if this fits. Yes, it can still fit. So the question was if something was like I had removed from the game and I was not happy to remove it. And as for basically, because the starting point, we'll get to that also once we get further down the design diary. But the starting point was that we are going to remake Dawn of Peacemakers. The same characters, the same armies, the same story. Basically the same game, but we just make improvements. It would be a campaign game with 12 scenarios, etc, etc. All the same stuff, just polish and refine and make it better. But then the more we processed, the more we went through that process of development cycle, we found out that we want to do more. We don't want to re-release Dawn of Peacemakers as is, even with all the refinements, but rather we want to make some radical changes, which resulted in with changing the name of the game. We wanted to keep Peacemakers, but we didn't want to keep the Dawn part of it to make it more clear that it's a new game, kinda in the same series, but also kinda like replacement, but it's a re-implementation of the system with all new stuff. Some things we removed. We can go through the design diary there as well. We did remove the campaign part, so it's just 6 individual scenarios in hopes of making the game easier to actually get on the table. We removed agendas and traitor aspects, which the original game did have, where it turns into a semi-cooperative game. You could still play it cooperative if you wanted, but the intent was to make the game that you play with the possible traitors and everyone has their own agendas. And we were also a little bit sad to let that go, but it was done because we wanted to focus on the peacemaking theme, and if someone wants to get a game about peacemaking, they expect that you can work together instead of some semi-cooperative aspects, especially as it was not advertised on the game or the box or our material, because we wanted it to be a surprise when you play through the campaign. So it was about not meeting the expectations that players might have when they play. So that's one of the things we removed. And also the skirmish mode, as this also has it has a lot of going on, maybe even a little bit too much now that we have taken a closer look at it after the years. it had a skirmish mode where you can control the fighting armies and no one is playing a Peacemaker, so that's also like something you don't expect from a game named Dawn of Peacemakers. So we removed that aspect for this one as well. But removing all of those gives us more design space to add stuff that does support the team, as we removed stuff that did not serve the theme of peacemaking in order to better focus on what the game wants to be and what people expect when they hear about a game named Peacemakers. And there are some new other questions as well, but we can go through the design diary a little, and I will get back to the questions. Feel free to add more as we go. It's really nice and fun to answer those. But we can take a look at the design diary so we don't get stuck too much. The first proper section, well, this is a proper section too, but pretty brief one, is about choosing a new direction. And I already said a little bit about that, like what do we want to do with the game, what direction we want to push it. And the thing I already mentioned was that the game should focus on that peacemaking theme, what people expect when they get that. And to get to this point, we had identified many pain points that people had with the original game, and we did this by making a questionnaire. Anyone who owned the game or had played it could answer it on like a form online. We read reviews of people, like normal player reviews on Board Game Geek. We read and watched, of course, reviews of content creators, and we just anywhere we heard feedback about the game, we collected all that feedback in one file, and we went through the feedback and find the things that were repeated the most and which one we did want to address, because no game is for everyone. So if someone says, oh, I don't like this because it's cooperative game, well, then maybe the game is not for you, and that's not the feedback that we want to address in a way. But we found out the main points that people repeatedly said that we did want to address, and they are listed here in a non-specific order. The first feedback that was repeated multiple times was that the player characters, the 4 adventures, lack any special abilities. And something that did not help with this aspect was that the game had envelopes that you could get to open. We can take a look at those quickly. So before your first play, you would read this fluff and also the adventure descriptions, and the game asks you to decide an adventure you want to play. And then once you had made that decision, you could open one of these envelopes, which one is for your chosen adventure. And we were like setting you up like, oh, this is an important decision, let's find out which one I want to play. And once you open the envelope, it's a letter, like a story letter describing why your adventure wants to do the stuff that they do during the game. So we set the expectations for players like, oh, it's an important decision, but in the end it did not have any mechanical repercussions. It was just no. It was, you could choose anyone and they all play the same. So we understand that we should have not make you think that they are all very different when they are not. But even still, now we went through the trouble of making them different. All the adventures are played differently depending on the resource cards that players use to take actions, and all resource cards have some special abilities based on if you are the specific adventure. Like anyone can use emergency care to remove 2 damage, but if you're playing the green gecko, Tambatro, you can remove 4 damage. Just one example from the many resource cards. So now they are all different, and that was one of the main pain points people pointed out. And the next one is that setup and teardown take a long time, and you saw the here. This one takes a long time to put all the different tiles on the board based on the rulebook. And the rulebook shows you. Here's the first scenario. So you have to build the tiles here on the game board based on the illustration. And you also have to build the so-called order decks, which are here and here, by picking specific cards from the insert. And that also takes a long time. So those combined, the setup time can take easily 10 minutes or more, even 15 minutes with the bigger scenarios later down the campaign. And that's one of the things we'd really wanted to tackle with the new version. So now, depending on which scenario you play, you just take all cards for a given scenario from here. You don't need to build any decks, and instead of building the map on board with tiles, you simply open the map books on the correct page and you're done. So those are 2 main ways we made the setup a lot faster. The pain point number 3, rules have elements that were hard to remember. We made streamlined without sacrificing gameplay depth, and we can get to specific examples later in the design diary. Number 4, letting army units die is too prevalent strategy, conflicting with the theme. And also touched this a little bit earlier already, and we can go through this more down in the design diary, but that was one of the main ways to actually win the game, to let units get defeated, and we changed that pretty much entirely. This one was also one of the hard ones, as one of the questions earlier. This was one of the hard things, like how do we fix this? We still want the army units to be able to get defeated, but how do we alter this that it's not the main way to win? And that took a while to figure out. And last point in the list is a long campaign requires a significant commitment from players, like 12 scenarios. Do you want to play? If you play the first scenario and you don't like it, but then the group is kind of screwed, etc., etc. So we decided to go a different path with individual scenarios. Again, more on that later. This is more like overview of the things that we noticed people disliked for one reason or another, and we wanted to address them. Here's a picture of one of the early prototypes where I was using these handmade map books, which I'm still using for the later scenarios. I have them somewhere here. This is the final map books will look more or less like this. Pretty illustrations and stuff for the maps. You have 2, you put them side by side to form the map. But for my prototyping stuff, I have these 2 ugly ones that I print and make holes and put together, and for different scenarios, and make updates, print stickers, put on top, and make fixes and stuff. And I found these nice little nice little hooks. I don't know what they're called, that you can open and close, so I can add more pages and remove old ones as I make changes and I need new scenarios. And you can see them here. And I didn't have the final meeples, of course, when we started doing this, so just use the miniatures from Dawn of Peacemakers. Some scenarios we could use the correct ones, but for example, this Ocelot leader is a placeholder for the Tuatara captain over here in the boat. But they worked fine. I had paper standees. I can find them from one of the old prototypes later in the original Dawn of Peacemakers, but now I had the luxury of using components from the release version of Dawn of Peacemakers. And then it's next section, but before that we can go through the new one extra question, and it's from Coglistro. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. When starting out, how hard was it to find good printers, figurine makers, etc.? I assume nowadays you have built up a rapport with your suppliers. How to find good manufacturers? Well, there are multiple options on how to approach this, but I had prior experience. Like nowadays, we are using 2 factories. We are using 1 factory in Europe when we don't need super specialized parts, and we're using 1 factory in China when we do want really specialized parts, and that's essentially the difference with, well, like when we use one or the another. As for example, here we have the wooden meeples. They can do those, of course, anywhere basically, but these custom soft plastic bases for these miniatures or meeples, wooden figures that you can stack on like that, these ones are kind of really special and different. No one has made these before, and whenever the case is for something like this, then we tend to go to China, as usually if we would ask the European factory to produce these, they would just outsource them to China. So in that case, it doesn't make sense for us to have an extra middleman in between. And as for how easy or hard it was, like we are using Panda Game Manufacturing in China, and those were easy to find and easy to work with. And as I chose it one, as I have read many design diaries and articles online where people were saying that they were using, for example, Stonemaier Games uses Panda Game Manufacturing and had just good things to say about those about them. So that's one of the main reasons we started working with them with Dawn of Peacemakers. And as for finding in Europe, it was a little bit harder, as especially when you are a smaller indie publisher. Not all manufacturers, not all factories even reply to your emails, or if they do reply, they reply very, very late. Like they don't think you are a worthy customer and they don't pay too much attention to you. So it can be troublesome at first to try to find good contacts who would want to work with smaller publishers. But it's basically just trying to contact many different parties, reading articles online, asking questions. The good thing about board game industry is that people are really open in helping each other and telling answering questions instead of keeping them secret close to their chest. So if you need help with this, you can drop me a line, email, or contact me on our Discord, or just putting a message here on YouTube. I will get back to that when I see your message. Let's see where the design diary goes next. It's the focused identity, and this is basically just we are explaining like what we keep. First, we tried to do just a remake of Dawn of Peacemakers, but once we realized that we were better not actually doing that, what would be like the key core of the game that we build everything around, and then focus everything around that. And that was the theme of peacemaking and cooperation, and no traitors or stuff like that. So that made it clear for us like what we can remove and what we can keep in the game. As first we wanted to be more faithful to Dawn of Peacemakers, but then we found out that we don't actually want that, because that would tie our hands and we would not be able to make the game as good as we could otherwise. And just a nice little photo of the iguanas, and also how we separated the scenarios instead of making a full campaign like individual ones, and how it makes it easier for people to actually play the game, as you need less of a commitment to just play a single game. I can myself attest to that, like I have campaign games not finished on my shelf, and even for Dawn of Peacemakers, there have been many instances where, I would like to play it, I like the game, but it's hard to get on the table because it's a campaign game. We can't just, let's play one game and that's it, let's put it back on the shelf, and if we like it, we can play it again later if we want. But with the new one, normal game group nights, we can just play one round and that's it. We don't need to commit to a large campaign, but we can still have fun and keep track of our progress if we want, with the included scenario log, where you can keep track if you have won a scenario, if you have won it without casualties, and then the added challenges. But you don't need to play with the same group of people if you don't want to, and you don't need to play in a specific order, and you can replay them as many times as you want. Another nice photo, and then we have components to serve a purpose. So this is about partly about meeples, partly about the map books and stuff. We can go through some of the early prototypes of the wooden figures and their bases. For context, the original game here, Dawn of Peacemakers, has this pretty like regular, of course they're custom, but like miniatures with 20mm bases. This is one of the adventures, and the army units also are similar, just different color, but they use these bases. You can put them on the adventures, but you're never asked to do that. So the game comes with these miniatures and the custom bases with different shapes. Let's see if I can. That's also the same one. Here's the different shapes. So you have the top one has the star shape, and then the middle is a gear, and then a circle. So that's an important part of the design, that you need to differentiate between which army the unit belongs to and which group it belongs to. And in the original the color of the base indicates the army, like this is now a parrot in the blue army, and the shape indicates the group. In the new one, let's find the same one, for example here, the leader. Here is the same one, but it's now the bases are all single color, so it will only show the group, and the color of the wooden figure will show the army. So in the old game, this Macaw, for example, this could be in any colored army, but in the new one, they are always in the red army basically. So that's one of the changes as well. So now we, in the scenario, we don't mix different ones to same army. They can still be on the same side, but they will have their own cards. Like the Tuatara will be together with the bears, but he has his own cards and the bears have their own cards, which makes them have a stronger identity. But this is like the new one and this is the old one, and as promised, I can try to find some old stuff. I don't remember, this is a prototype I think too, but this has miniatures and stuff. There's not, this is like a pre-production copy from the factory, not much to show there. This is the oldest one when there's, well, I didn't even know what the game was called. And here's one of the one that I used for the longest time with all the stains and damage. And here's the, let's take the same one. You can compare all of them together. The original, here's the standee I used. It has the illustration that I sent to the sculptor who made the sculpt for this miniature, and this is the new version, the same person. But this is for the adventures, I used those. And for the armies, they are here. I didn't need to do this with the new one because as I said, I used the miniatures from Dawn of Peacemakers, but this was how I prototyped the armies and their bases in the original. I had the same plastic standee. I made a hole in the cardboard, cut it in shape, and put the cut out standee like that. And that evolved into this one, which then later on now is like this in the new version. There are some, I think that's mostly about the Wooner figures and their bases. Oh yes, I can show a version of this. So let's that aside. Here's an older version of the new game, and we got some samples of the bases. It was even the factory was a little bit hesitant on this because they had never done anything quite like this, and these are hard plastic. These don't deform, so this was the first sample we got from the factory, and you could not put the meeples in these because they don't fit because these do not deform. But we forced one just to see how it would look, but this is like the meeple is damaged on the base, and also this is damaged quite a lot because we just wanted to see how it would look with the base. But then we made them from soft material. This was part of the prototyping process to make them first from hard plastic. Like I believe these are like 3D printed with really high quality. Then we made the soft ones. Welcome to the stream, Smien. I think the question has been answered now. Have you thought about providing more scenarios? And let's answer that question right now. And I'll keep this brief. I answered this in the question and answer stream, but basically the game will come with 6 scenarios, which are really different from each other, and there's a high amount of replay value in those scenarios. And we are currently not looking at providing expansions, basically because an expansion would have to add almost everything. Like, we want all the scenarios to be really unique, so they would have to have more new units, new order cards, and new map books. So it's almost like a new game already. Like, you would recycle, you could not be able to reuse a lot of these components. So if people really like this, then we will rather consider making a standalone sequel, which would be like a new continent, maybe new adventures, all new factions, all new order cards, etc. So that's like, we are not planning to have more scenarios for this game, but if people really like the system, we can use now the refined new system to make a new standalone box with new content. That being said, we do plan on releasing templates, like for the map books and for all the different card types in the game, so you can design your own fan scenarios. And personally, I would like to try those out, because it's always different to try a scenario fresh without knowing anything about it, instead of designing and playing it yourself multiple times. So we are going to release templates so you can make your own scenarios, and hopefully people do that. That would be really fun. There's another question as well, but let's first go through the design diary a little bit more. Here you can see also this is the first, when we were thinking about maybe we could do meeples, because we did meeples for Lands of Galzer, and we really liked those meeples, and people really liked those as well. And so we thought that if we could keep our games more coherent, so instead of using miniatures, we could use meeples in our games. But that made us add the question, like, if we want meeples, we can't use the bases, hard plastic bases, because they don't snap on miniatures, or if they do, or like with meeples. But if they would, it would probably break the meeple, so we didn't want to do that. But then we thought that maybe we could do something new, so we would have the wooden meeple, and then we would have soft plastic or rubber base that the meeple sticks into. And the game that gave us this inspiration is Viticulture World. And that game, if you don't know, it has, let's find, it has these soft rubber hats for the meeples. So you can see here's one meeple without it, and here's one with it. And this is similar material to our bases, that it can deform if you squish it. So it's soft plastic, and it can, therefore you can stick it on top and it will grip the wood and instead of breaking it, it just grips it slightly. And that's what inspired us, that maybe we can use the similar material for these bases. But instead of putting the soft plastic on top, we would put the miniature inside the soft plastic. And now I forgot to take the question away. Let's do that. And here's the finished look of those with some ocelots. And here's we go through some of the, like, we talked about the map books which make the setup faster. We talked about the scenario based cards that make the setup faster, but number 3, like third key thing in the game that makes the setup also faster is the insert. So here's an early prototype where I was thinking where the different parts could go and such, and like the scenarios could be all here with their cards, and meeples separate into their own wells for different colors and stuff. And here's then the prototype that we got from the factory, and that one already showed a little, but it's here. And when you choose to play a scenario, you can see that we have labels here inside, where you can see that all the scenario card number 1 cards are here, 2, 3, etc, etc, and they are also on the other side, so no matter how you have the box. And the same goes for these army units. You can see where the different units are, and they're also here on the front. So it's really fast and easy. Let's play scenario number 2. Let's take all cards for scenario number 2, and let's grab the units we need, and the bases, adventures, which are like they're flush here, but they're made so you can push here and take them, or you can push their head, whichever you prefer, as it has this raised middle part there, so they look really neat and nice, and you can still really easily take any of them out from the insert. And for example, here we also have a like a curved part, so you can scoop them up like this, because some inserts, these are like straight walls instead of being curved, and they're really hard to scoop away. But like this, you can really easily scoop away from here because it's curved over there. Same for the die, like you can get everything away from the insert easily. So the insert, the map books, the scenario-based cards are together make setup, and they are done really fast and effortless. Not that one. Let's go back to the design diary. And then we have a section about the rules and what we made to streamline different aspects, and some examples of those. But there's a question from Michelle. Is it easier to keep the game design-wise in the same world as your other games, or does it make any difference? And Smien says that they love the world of Dymuria, the world our games take place in. So let's rephrase the question. It's too long for the box. How does the game world affect the design? I guess that is our topic. So is it easier or harder to keep the games in the same universe? It doesn't really limit us too much, as you might think that it would limit us to keep all our different games. Well, this game basically the same game here, but if we have Dale of Merchants, Peacemakers, and Lands of Culture, and it clarifies on your mind, like it makes it, I'd say, mostly easier, but it's also, it can limit us, but only the slightest, because we can do almost anything we want in the world. We can put the games in different time periods. We can put them in different parts of the world. and even if we wanted some sky, some like future stuff, we can just put the game like multiple thousands years in the future, and then we have spaceships and we can do whatever sci-fi stuff we want. So it doesn't really limit us, and it makes it at least more fun for us as well to make the games, as we can put Easter eggs and like hints of the different games in a way that they make feel like a coherent world together. So usually when we make a new game, we build the game world around our new theme or aspect. Like we create new factions, like in South America, like okay, we didn't have toucans before, we don't have green iguanas or the strawberry poison frogs, and now we are going to create and hone their culture, and then we can like we always design more of their cultures and stuff than we show in the games, and then because then we can just like pick like what makes sense in this game to show about them. And we have an internal like Wikipedia kind of page where we keep track of all our world building stuff, so it's easy to what kind of personalities do Macaws usually have, what kind of government are they having, who was their emperor in this year, and etc etc. Of course it's not like exhaustive, it doesn't have everything, but we are adding as we need to add more stuff there. So yeah, basically it's like it makes it more fun for us because we are already attached to the world. So when we make a new game, we are already attached to the new game even, and we like to work with the world and we like to make more stuff for it. So it makes us more easily like interested and have well, motivation to keep going, and because we love to show new aspects of the world for people. What examples do we have? It's just explaining some stuff. The game, for those who are not yet too familiar with the flow, is that there's adventure phase where you as an adventurer can take actions on the game board using the previously shown resource cards, and after you have taken those your chosen actions, you get some extra ones, and then it's the army's turn, and then the armies will flip over and resolve these army order decks, like take orders, and they will go off in certain order, and they will try to basically kill each other. So we made some streamlining for both the adventure phase and the army phase, quite a lot to be specific. So for example, in the old army phase, the armies could sometimes quite often even, go off at the same time. So you would have to resolve the Ocelot order and the Macaw order at the same time, which meant that, for example, if they attack each other, they attack simultaneously, which can result in the Macaws killing some Ocelot units, which still can attack the Macaws. So you would not be able to remove the defeated unit from the board until you have resolved both orders fully, and that came up. And they could also try to move to Spain's base, which is not allowed, so no one moves. So there were quite a few small extra rules to handle the simultaneous actions that could take place during the army phase. But we reworked their speed system, which makes it now impossible for them to have simultaneous actions. So one side always goes before the next, or in this case 3 armies, they will all go off at different times. There's no one can go before the other during different rounds, but they can't go off at the same time. So that is one of the examples how we streamlined the army phase to have less of, not even expect. Now I'm lost at words. Not even like exceptions Yes, that's the word I was looking for. But rather just tiny extra rules that need to describe if this happens, if this happens, if this happens. But now they can't go off at the same time, so there's no worrying about. We could drop those rules, like what happens if they try to do something at the same time. Something we dropped also, some other effects, like you could previously, if an army unit moved, you could move with the army unit. But it was something you just had to remember that, oh, I can do that. But now you can't move with the army units for free. You have to move yourself. But that made moving a bit too expensive sometimes, because it was in the original because moving was too expensive. So let's let you can move with the army units, done. But in the new version, how we made sure that moving is not too expensive, even if we remove the annoying move freely with the army units, is that some cards, when you move, you can draw an extra card. So this way, the movement doesn't cost a card because you get a new one, but not all cards have it. So it's still not like you can always move for free, but you need to think when you do it. And some cards have like multiple. For example, this one here has 3 movement, the hurry up. So maybe you want to move that with that one instead, but you often do have the option to just use one card and get the replacement to move 1 space. So that's one of the examples how we streamlined the army phase by changing also the adventure phase actions. And then the biggest change we made for the adventure phase is that in the original game, let's see if I can find it here and compare to this one, for example. We had the top icon on the different icons was this card symbol, and it was called influence. And with that one, you could draw cards from the army's decks, look at them, reorder, and put them back. And other players could also help you with that action, no matter where they are. So it was quite a difficult action to explain what it does, because it does so much with just one icon. But the new one, and it also meant, because it was so strong, you use it quite a lot in the game. You just look at the orders, you reorder, put back, and done. But now the new simplified version is this eye symbol. It's called survey, and it simply lets you flip over the top card of an army deck face up. And let's see if we have an example here. Like these are the upcoming orders. They are face down, but one of them here is face up. So someone has used one of the eye symbols to flip that card open, and the action is that it doesn't do anything else, just flips it open. So it's way easier to explain, way easier to understand, and it also is less powerful, which is intentional, or at least less flexible, as now you can't reorder the cards with the same action. And that meant that we could add new cool effects to the cards. For example, the card shown previously, this consultation is a new card. It lets you move 1 or 2 cards from nearby armies to any other position in the respective decks. So with this you can reorder the cards. So you would have to look at this and then or with some other cards, because you can use only 1 effect per card. But it made it so that you don't always just resolve every problem with just influence action. Now you have to use more of your different tools in your toolbox, and it makes for more interesting gameplay when it's less about one single action and more about, okay, what do we move, do we fortify, do we use the scheme, the special effects, do we survey. There's more, the gameplay is richer this way. And those are some of the large changes we made for the rules to make them a little bit more streamlined. There's a picture of some of the other resource cards. This talks about making them different, which we changed, which we already went through. Here's an example of one of the resource cards and the adventure specific effect, like other players can give +2 defense, but the fox adventure can give +3 defense with encouraging words. Also highlights the card draw on the travel action. Here's some examples I already went through about the army phases. Oh, and one large thing I did not explain yet is that in the old game we had army unit cards, and they look like this, and they have this their specifications, like their attack range and stuff like that, but they also have special abilities. So almost all units in the game had special abilities printed on their cards, and when you put those cards on the table, let's see again. It's back. When you put this on the table and they are in any given scenario, you have to remember the abilities that they have and refer back to the cards to see those abilities. But in our new game, let's open this one. We don't have army unit cards. They're printed on the map book, so you don't need to even find them. They're right here. They only have their specifications here, their range, attack, and HP. They don't have any special abilities. This is just story, which also can sometimes hint you at what they do in the scenario, but it's not rules. And this means that you don't have to remember passive effects during gameplay, which is really nice. So instead of having abilities here, it doesn't mean that they don't have abilities. The abilities are now on the scenario specific cards, and whenever it draws a card, for example, that it might have a special effect for Commander Sotsiamak, or for the second scenario, like Tuatara pirates are really iconic. They have many special abilities, but they are on their own specific deck, and it will describe what they do. So you never need to remember, oh, they have +1 damage when they're next to this leader. And now everything is laid out on the order cards that you draw every round, so you don't forget various rules that passively are ongoing. And that's one of the large changes that we made to make the game play smoother and easier. And one smaller addition is also these purple notes that we have both on the game board, especially we have even more of them in the first scenario. We have these purple notes in various places reminding you of rules, of specific rules. We also have them on some cards, even most in the first scenario again, like rules reminders and tooltips, like how does this work? Oh, it's right here, like here. What does this anchor means? We didn't have it in the first scenario. Oh, the rule is right here. So the map books make it possible for us to have rules like this, and the scenario specific cards similarly can help us to do that, to lower the barrier to entry, to make it game easier to play for the first time. And the second to last section in the design diary is Horrors of War, which is the namesake of the game, and those are like the dark side of the resource deck, so to speak. It's the answer to not wanting to let the units die, and that was one of the questions asked earlier in the stream, that what was the hardest thing to work around or change or design wise, and that was like, how do we want to make people to not want to kill the units in the game, as it makes I didn't describe it yet here, but the goal of the game is to get both sides motivation, which is this numerical value here tracked with the glass bead, on green at the same time, and you win if you manage to do that. And when units get defeated, they get put down here, and their motivation lowers by 1. And it just makes thematic sense to lower the motivation every time a unit is defeated. And we didn't want to remove that aspect, but at the same time, we wanted you to discourage doing that. So it was like, how do we keep this thematic aspect in the game while making it like players not want to do it all the time, as it's against the theme of your Peacemakers, just let everyone die, and their motivation gets lowered. And the answer is twofold. One is make their motivation so high that even if all the units get defeated, everyone except one, because if everyone dies, they surrender and you lose. If everyone but one dies, it's not enough. And that was one way to do it. Like the iguanas have 4 units here, they start with 10. Even if 3 dies, which is the maximum before they surrender and you lose, is there at 7. And 7 is not green for them, which is only 1 and 2. So you're not going to get to green with defeating units. But still, it's this first part of the solution. The motivation is lowered by ruining their plans, which are here on the order cards. But how do we make it sure that you don't want to even kill the 3 ones to get closer to victory, or at least make it painful? And the answer for that is the horror cards. So now anytime a unit gets defeated, the players, as I said earlier, you have your resource deck that you use to do all your actions. But there's now a new addition of this new horror deck. And anytime a unit gets defeated, we take 1 horror and put it on top of your resource deck. And this solved so many problems, and it works so well. Like, it's for a reason we named the game after this, or like the subtitle. And now whenever you draw a new card, this will count as a drawn card, but it's bad one. So you lose a card draw every time you draw a horror card, and in addition to not being a helpful resource card, it's a bad card. It has an effect that will hinder you. It will make your game more chaotic and harder, and that's to balance. It doesn't mean that the game gets harder and harder if units get defeated. It certainly can go that way too, but the game gets somewhat easier because there are less units on the game board. There's less units that can attack other units. There are less units that can kill and can die anymore. So in that way, the game becomes a little bit more easier, more controllable. But at the same time, thematically, the adventurers are losing their minds. They're like seeing the horrors, and it's not good for their mental health. And this is what these cards represent. Like, anytime they see units getting defeated, their mind crumbles a little, so to speak. So they make your adventures, your plays harder. So it balances out, like it's a little easier on one front, but also more unpredictable and chaotic on one front. We have 2 examples here, one being the compulsive hoarding. This is a card that will come with the normal game. It has the priority list of adventures over here, and the effect will target the adventure whose icon is at the top. So if you're playing with, let's say, the red adventure and the blue one, it will hit the blue one. But if the fox is in the game, the compulsive hoarding will target, the effect will target the fox. And in this example, during next refresh, which is when you normally get to draw extra cards, you draw 1 card fewer. And normally you draw 4 cards divided between players. With 2 players, you draw 2 each, for example. But when compulsive hoarding has been drawn, you actually can only draw 3 cards. And all of those go to the player who has this, so fox normally. So it means that instead of having an even distribution of resource cards around the game board, like with all players, depending where you are, everything goes to one player. So that will already hinder your ability to do stuff evenly everywhere quite a lot. So you need to figure out, does the fox need to move closer to other players so he can hand out cards to others and stuff like this. And the echoing fears is an example without the adventure icons here on the left, and that means it will affect everyone, and also it's part of the horror promo deck that is now free if you pre-order on GameFound, but later on you can get it for extra fee. It will have 10 extra horrors. The base game will come with 24 horrors, and the new horror pack will come with 10 extra ones, and they do not have priority list here, but they're rather just nasty for everyone. And an example being this Echoing Fears, and when you draw that one, so again, reminder, you draw it from the top of your resource deck, you flip it over, and then you resolve it, and it does eat a card draw. You would have to roll the 12-sided die, and if you roll 1 to 8, you would have to place the card back on top of your resource deck, and it will then again eat a card draw later on. If you roll 9 or more, you will discard the horror card, and then we get to a new part, like where do you discard horror cards? You discard them on top of a resource discard pile, and once your resource deck has run out, you reshuffle your discard pile to form a new one, including the horrors. So the earlier you let units die in the game, the earlier you get the horror cards into your deck, and the more you will see them during the game, because they will never go away from there, outside from going to a next game. But as long as you're still playing the same scenario, the card stays there until you win or you lose. So this is a really fun way to discourage letting units die in the game. So it made thematic sense, it works mechanically really nicely, and they're just fun. Like, they make chaos and new interesting situations for you to play around. And because of they do not get discarded away, but they are like cycled through again and again, you know who it will hit again later. For example, if the fox is in the game and you drew compulsive hoarding and then it goes to discard pile and you reshuffle, you know that it's going to get here. You will draw it sooner or later again, and they have different card pack, so you'd also see when it's on top. You are not allowed to see where it's in the middle, but once it's on top, there it is, or at least one. There can be multiples and you don't know which one, but you know that a horror is on top. So you can try to play around it, like, okay, fox, you have to come closer to me before you draw your horror, so you can actually give me some of cards that should be mine, but you hoarded everything. So that's a really fun part also, to see when there's a horror on top and when not, and how to react to that with your gameplay. And that was the second to last, and the last section is really short one, just conclusion. Hoping that you enjoyed both the stream and the written design diary that you can find on Board Game Geek. Once more, link down in the description. I'm not sure if there's something else I should show from the old prototypes. This one I don't have as much like super interesting and unique stuff to like variations to show, because I could reuse so many of the old games components for this one. So I have this old box here with the homemade insert glued together to put the cards in their sections before I received the sample. We have some of the meeples, but they are really similar to the final ones, and I showed you the insignia tokens, the bases, but they look the same, but they're just solid hard plastic instead of soft ones. So and I already showed the map books as well. Not sure if there's some old Dawn of Peacemakers stuff interesting enough to show. Some tiles, but we don't even have tiles anymore in the new one. Plenty of cards. Some of these are handwritten, some are printed for different armies. Some have been fixed with a sticker. A lot of old cards. And similar to, but here I don't have as much like ugly prototype art because I used many of the Dawn of Peacemakers cards as backs and stuff. So they look a lot nicer that way. Like I had a pile of old resource cards from Dawn of Peacemakers that I used as a base for those. I used the different card types from Dawn of Peacemakers, and then I got these new samples from the factory when we were further down the design. So I've been using those as well. Not too much to show there. We did use on some of the earlier ones before I got some art done. I did have these uglier card packs like these for the Tucans. They have some secrets, but nothing too exciting to show, I think. This is from the time where we were thinking that we would actually make a remake of Dawn of Peacemakers instead of a new game. That it would have actually like dividers, and you could have one for all the different scenarios. We would have different letters like A, B, C, D for different events where you get new cards and stuff, and you would have your resource deck. You could improve your resource deck during the campaign and stuff. But thought that got scrapped and replaced with the new insert where you just put different scenario cards in different places. So we didn't need the dividers for that. It's easier to use and also lowers the cost, so the game is more affordable, more approachable in that way as well. But yeah, that's pretty good look at that. Here's some soft samples from the factory. Just some from different games, so they say, oh, we can use this material in the new form, so we just feel out like, oh, is this good or not. Here's some old from Dawn of Peacemakers, some miniature tooling masters from, I don't even remember what the material is called, but these are for that one, but not too relevant for our new game anymore. But I'll repeat once again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them down in the comments, and I will answer them as soon as I get the chance. Or you can also ask on the Board Game Geek design diary and or Discord, wherever you put the questions. I'll try my best to find and answer them. Yeah, I thank everyone for joining, those who joined live and provided nice questions for me, and also those who were here or who watched this later. Thank you for watching. And yeah, the game is still a little less than a week on GameFound, link on the description. If this sounds interesting, looks interesting, you can find gameplay videos and rules and more there. And as always, if you want to join future streams and see our videos and content, you can subscribe on the channel. Thank you and have a nice evening. Bye!